Hey everyone, welcome back to the Mass Retirees Weekly Update. Today's Friday, October 1st. Thank you so much for tuning in and joining us again this week. We've had a super busy week, but before I get into that, let me just take care of a couple of quick housekeeping items. Now, you know that every week on Friday morning, this video comes out accompanied by an email blast to all of our members for whom we have an email address for. So first of all, if you're a Mass Retirees member, but you're not getting my email every Friday morning, reach out, let us know that you're not getting the email. We'll make sure that we have your email address in our system and everything's up to date. But also check your spam filter. Unfortunately, as much as I hate to say it, sometimes my message ends up in someone's spam or trash folder inadvertently. So check that, just make sure that it's not going to the inappropriate folder. And I promise we're not going to send you countless emails and just flood you with messages. I think all of us realize that we're getting a little bit too much email from time to time. So we really try to keep this to a bare minimum of just keeping you updated. So it goes out every Friday. If you don't open it, a reminder email is sent again on Monday morning just to make sure that you saw it. But again, it's every week. I try to keep this fresh. All of us contribute. We work together in terms of what we're going to present each week. We try to keep it somewhat unique and based on whatever events have happened this past week, what we're anticipating going on next week, and not being overly repetitive. And the reason why I mention that is inadvertently every week, usually on social media, someone will ask in the questions, hey, what about this? What about that? You're not talking about WEP reform this week, or you're not talking about Medicare this week. Well, it may be that I just talked about that subject the previous week. And like I just said, we're not going to repeat the same information over and over again. That's not the purpose of these weekly updates. And quite honestly, I don't think that that's what you want to get. You don't want to hear me being a broken record. Correct me if I'm wrong, but that's my understanding. So if you're looking for a particular piece of information and you don't see it in today's video, take a look back on our website or on our Facebook channel or our YouTube channel. Look at the previous weeks or the previous couple of weeks' messages, and chances are you're going to find the subject that you're interested in, that you want to learn about. And as soon as we have new information on that topic that's important for us to share with you, we're absolutely going to do that. We're going to do that here on this channel. We're going to do that in the email message that comes out from me every Friday. We're certainly going to do that in our newsletter and on the massretirees.com website. It is a big part of what we do here to make sure that all of our members are very well informed, that your questions are answered, that we're here to provide services for you, to make sure that your health insurance claims are being paid and so forth. So if you're not seeing something from us that you want to know about, let us know, but chances are it's something that we have published, and as soon as we have updated information on that, we're going to get it to you right away. Now, speaking of that, tune in next Friday. I'm going to have a brand new, fresh update for all of you of what's happening with the Social Security windfall elimination provision reform efforts that we have been involved in now for a very, very long time. We have a series of meetings coming up next week. Hopefully that I'll have a fresh progress report to share with everybody about the progress that's being made on HR 2337, which of course is Congressman Richard Neal's Social Security reform bill, the WEP reform bill. Even though there's a ton of activity happening in Washington and all of us have been either watching or reading the news, you know about the day-to-day drama that is going on in Washington, D.C. between the House and the Senate, and the Republicans and the Democrats, and all the different factions that are all looking for something through these various legislative vehicles. All that being said, we are still working day in and day out on Social Security WEP reform. And again, we're going to have an update for you next week. But in the meantime, let me tell you a little bit about what's happened this past week, because we have a lot going on here at home in Massachusetts, a lot of exciting news, starting with the fact that yesterday, the state Senate unanimously overrode Governor Baker's veto of our legislation increasing the allowable work hours for post-retirement employment. A week ago, if you watched last week's video, you already know this, the House of Representatives unanimously overrode the veto. So both the House and the Senate have spoken. They've unanimously overridden the governor's veto. That veto no longer stands. Our proposal is no longer a proposal, it is now state law, effective this past July 1st, that increases the allowable work that a public retiree can perform here in Massachusetts in a public service position from the old 960 hours a year to a new limit of 1,200 hours a year. Now, I realize this does not apply to everybody. However, we have a growing number of members who are choosing or have chosen to return to part-time work in public service, in government, here in Massachusetts. And it's a choice that, again, that more and more of our members are making, and that those members who are working, they were really counting on this, and we've been hearing from you, and I really hope that this helps your situation and allows it to be a little bit easier for you to continue to work without all the bureaucratic hassle that went into trying to manage the 960 hours, which came out to roughly 18 and a half hours a week. So we've achieved that goal. It's going to provide a little bit of relief for those members, but we do also realize that at the same time that the vast majority of retirees don't continue to work, particularly as people age, and those members are finding it increasingly difficult to make ends meet, particularly the longer that someone's been retired. We all know that the pension just simply does not keep up with the cost of inflation, particularly these days with prices of many, many things now skyrocketing. It's more important than ever to increase the COLA base, to create a new senior or enhanced COLA, and to increase existing benefits like the veterans bonus, which leads me to my next point. This past Tuesday, the Joint Committee on Public Service, which again is the committee where all of the retirement legislation originates, it's chaired by State Senator Mike Brady from the city of Brockton and Chairman Ken Gordon from the town of Bedford. They're the co-chairman of the committee. The committee heard 4 association-sponsored bills this past week. The first bill, which Association President Frank Valeri testified in favor of, would guarantee that an estimated payment is made by the retirement system when someone retires. An estimated payment would go out within 60 days of the successful retirement application having been received. The reason why we have filed this, quite honestly, is due to the feedback that we've been receiving from recent retirees over the past few years. An increasing number of retirees have expressed complaints and concern to Frank as their elected member on the State Retirement Board, and contacting our office after joining with us to express their concern about delays in receiving the first check. Now, there are a bunch of different reasons for this. It's the paperwork that has to be taken place and the verification and the number of places that someone has worked throughout their career. All that information needs to be gathered together and accurately calculated. And sometimes it takes longer than anyone would like to see. And I need to give credit where it's due, and the state retirement system has been working very hard to try to streamline and speed up this process. But we feel that it is also requiring a change in state law, a change in the statute, in order for a prompt estimated payment to be made within 60 days. No retiree should have to go without income for any longer than 60 days unless it's some kind of an extreme circumstance where things have to be delayed for a certain or specific reason. So Frank testified on behalf of that bill. We had 2 pieces of legislation that I testified in favor of. Both of these bills are related to veterans and veterans benefits. The first bill retroactively changes the definition of veteran that was updated back in 2004. That definition under our legislation would be retroactively applied to anyone who retired prior to July 1st of 2004. And what the proposal does, quite simply, is it changes the definition of veteran for retirement purposes to include those individuals who served honorably in our armed services, but during times of so-called peace. Under the old definition, in order to be considered a veteran for retirement purposes, someone would have needed to serve during wartime or other very specific instances. So whether it was World War II, Korea, Vietnam, certain military actions over the last 30 years would have been included. But oftentimes, up until recently, many of those who were serving and considered veterans under federal law were not considered veterans under the state retirement law. So that was updated in 2004, but again, it wasn't retroactive for folks who are already retired. So we are trying to make a retroactive application. This would also apply to National Guard members who are activated for active duty for at least 90 days during a period of war. So it could have been someone who served more recently in the Persian Gulf or in Afghanistan, that they would also be considered a veteran. And why this is important is related to the next bill, which is in regard to the veterans bonus. There has been a veterans bonus on the books here in Massachusetts since 1957 that adds $15 a year for each year of credible service that someone has, up to a maximum of $300 at 20 years of service. This benefit and the benefit level has been in place since 1957. It's automatically part of a veteran's pension. It's nothing that someone needs to apply for. It doesn't show up as a separate item. It's just automatically included and rolled together. But again, it's never been updated since 1957. So our bill updates the benefit, and it brings it from a maximum of $300 a year to $1,000 a year. So we want to make sure that all honorably discharged veterans are eligible for this benefit. So that's why these two bills really go in hand and in tandem. And finally, the fourth bill that we testified on behalf of this week is in regard to surviving spouses and their rights under the retirement law to vote in retirement board elections. And Nancy McGovern spearheaded the testimony on this. We feel very strongly that surviving spouses should have a right to vote in retirement board elections. They have a vested interest in the success of these retirement systems. They're receiving a pension from that retirement system, and their livelihood and their peace of mind in retirement really depends on that. So they should have a voice in that process. So with that, those are the four bills. We now have 10 pieces of legislation that have received a public hearing, actually 11 pieces of legislation that have received a public hearing. We have 6 more to go. We anticipate that those hearings will take place sometime between now and Thanksgiving, most likely, and we'll keep you updated on that. But for now, tune in again next week. Again, I hope to have a new progress report on the Social Security WEP. We're going to press next week with our newsletter, so I'll have some information on upcoming events that we're publishing through that. But in the meantime, thank you for your support. Stay safe, and we'll talk to you again soon.